Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Guess what? I have a new lens. It's the new Canon 20mm f1.4 VCM. So what better way to review a lens than with an astro road trip? But don't forget to stay tuned to the end of the video. I'm going to go through some of the images that I captured with this lens to let you see how good or not those images may be. I'm also going to give you a bit of an overall review of the lens and how it performed. Greg from Photography and I have planned a trip into the Western Australia goldfields to focus on some astrophotography. I had managed to pick up the new lens just days before we left and was keen to get out on the road. We had planned to visit Kalgoorlie, Lake Ballard and also the ghost town of Gwalia. But first we stopped at Lake Campion for some Salt Lake goodness. So we made it down to Lake Brown in the Lake Campion Reserve area. Just come out for a bit of a scout. The plan was to come out here tonight to try and get some shots of the Milky Way and use part of the Salt Lake as a bit of a foreground interest. There is some parts of the lake which still have some water in them, but there's not much. The salt here looks pretty dried out. There's a few areas close to the edge of the lake which seem to be a bit unstable, but I've just been for a walk closer into the middle and it looks fairly stable, so it looks fairly dried out. The Milky Way is going to rise behind me somewhere. Just having a look on photopills, the Milky Way is going to rise probably about 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then probably get up high above us around about 11 o'clock. So I'm thinking be able to get part of the Milky Way and maybe a bit of an arch before it gets too high, but we'll need to make sure that we capture that party early. There is a nice campground here. It is a free campground. There's a couple of people here already and we arrived about 2 o'clock. There's also quite a famous rock that people like to come out here and try and climb. We did see a few people out here trying to climb that already, or at least starting to. Greg's found some interesting rocks, and there's a couple around here that actually look like they're small caves. So we're just talking about whether we can leverage these to get an interesting foreground. I found a particular spot which I think is going to be facing due south, and I think it could be like a nice spot for some star trails. So I'll decide later on tonight whether I'm going to do that. But Greg's also found some rocks with a gap that's just strategically placed to capture the Milky Way at just the right time, just as the Milky Way is coming up. So that's also an option too. So yeah, a couple of options that we found so far.
I reckon this is going to be super cool.
I reckon so.
Can't wait.
Yes. So we're currently out scouting for a morning spot. So the Milky Way will rise over the Salt Lake just after the sun goes down, and then it will come across, it'll be vertical for a while, and then it will set on the opposite side. So we're just looking for a spot where we can come and capture the setting Milky Way. Greg's been exploring the top of this hill. He thinks he's got a nice composition where the Milky Way is going to set in between two rocks, which is going to be pretty nice. I think I'm going to try something a little bit less adventurous. I'm thinking more along here somewhere. So the Milky Way should just hug the top of the hill. I think that'll be a nice option. Okay, so we're out back on the Salt Lake. I've found a little cave and I'm just setting up a camera to do a time lapse. I was going to set it up to do some star trails, but I couldn't really find a cave that was pointing directly south. So I'm going to do a time lapse for the rising Milky Way and I am set up in a little cave. Certainly you can see how enclosed it is, but I think on the back of the camera it actually is going to look quite nice. The Milky Way is about to become visible. It's probably just sitting just below the horizon right now, and I've just set up the camera to get it started. I'm going to essentially just going to set the camera off. I've got a interval of 15 seconds at I think it is about ISO 2000 to try and capture the Milky Way, and that's going to be at f2.8. So that should be plenty for me to get something decent. I've focused on some of the stars. The stars have come out already, so I have been able to focus the camera on the stars that are visible right now. So you can see how enclosed this is. It's really quite tiny. This is the image on the back of the camera at the moment. So you can see the top of the cave. You may be able to see some of the stars that have come out. I can certainly see them on the camera, but I don't know if it's going to come through in the video. I've just had a second thought about the time and the ISO. I've left the ISO at 2000 and I've got the aperture at f2.8, but I've decided to go for 25 seconds, given that I'm going to be shooting the Milky Way. So I'm just going to start taking these shots, and I'm just going to continually take the shots and leave the camera here, and I'll come back for it maybe in a couple of hours. Okay, so I've got the time lapse going. I found another cave to set up my other camera. I have someone else here with me, a couple of cave dwellers. And I've just set up the new lens on my Canon R6. It's the Canon 20mm f1.4 VCM, voice coil motors, for the focus, and it's an L series lens. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this can do. I've just set this up. I've actually got my tracker set up as well, although I haven't turned that on, so I'm just taking some test shots. But the images on the back of the camera are actually looking quite good. This is my quick test shot. And I've had a look, I've zoomed in on the back of the camera. It's looking quite good on the edges, so I was quite impressed with that, and that's kind of what I was hoping for. This is the back of the camera, so I've got 15 seconds, f1.4 and ISO 1600. Given that the ISO is actually fairly low, I was quite impressed about how much detail came through on the back of the camera. The real test will be when I bring this into Photoshop and actually do some editing. The Milky Way is still coming up over the horizon. I'm still going to have to hang around here for a little bit longer just to get a shot with the core well and truly above the horizon. But it is still pretty early. The skies are quite dark already. The images on the back of the camera do look a bit dirty. They're a bit brown in color. I've checked the white balance, and it's what I normally have is about 4,000 Kelvin. So I'm hoping that when the Milky Way core rises a bit more above the horizon, that the images will become a bit clearer. Kind of hoping, given that we are in a salt lake at the moment, I'm expecting that there is some residue from the salt in the air, which is probably impacting the quality of the image, especially with the Milky Way so close to the horizon. Been playing with the new lens a little bit more. I've been able to change a few settings, and I'm even more impressed now with the lens. I have taken a series of shots. I'm going to stack them, but these are 15 seconds at f1.4, and the ISO was set to 800. So I was playing around with the ISO a fair bit. I got it down to about 800 without having too many issues. And I think if I stack those, put them into Lightroom and do a bit of an edit, then that's going to come out pretty well. I've done a bit of light painting inside. Well, I borrowed Greg's light to do some light painting on the inside of the cave. I've had to refocus within the cave just because it's so close. I think it's come out pretty well now. So here's the image. Well, I've just had a reminder from the photography gods to be a bit careful when I'm stumbling around in the dark. I did go for a bit of a tumble, nothing broken, a bit of a graze on my fingers. I was holding my camera at the time, but it was on the tripod, so I was able to put the tripod down and save the camera, save the lens. But yeah, so the only thing broken is probably my pride, and I'm going to have a sore butt tomorrow. So yeah, just something to be mindful when you're out and about, stumbling around in the dark. If you're as clumsy as me, just take it a little bit easy. So I've moved from under the rocks out to the salt lake. I think given that I'm no longer protected by the rocks in the cave, definitely starting to feel the cold now. I wanted to get some textures in the salt lake, so I've done a pano of about 7-8 images, and I'm going to do an equivalent pano of the sky. So I've got my sky tracker set up. I've got my camera set up on the top of the sky tracker. I've aligned it south. Hopefully that's aligned pretty well. I'm hoping to get a series of images around about a minute and a half, something like that. Like I said, it is starting to get a bit cold, and just standing around here taking a couple of shots is it's a bit of a struggle. I might have to go and find some gloves pretty soon. With a pano, the idea is to keep all your images as straight and level as possible, so that when you come to merge them later on, it just merges a lot better. So I use the indicators on the back of the screen to make sure that the camera is level, to be able to move it up the same plane so that all the images are the same. What I found though, especially with nighttime pano images, the indicators that I have on the Canon R6, it pretty much shows you up to about 30 degrees incline or decline. Sometimes when I'm doing a sky pano, I will have the camera tilted at more than 30 degrees. I think at about 39, 40 degrees at the moment. More to capture the sky because the Milky Way is rising, and I want to make sure that I capture the whole lot. One trick that I found, if you've got your phone handy and you've got an app that allows you to measure the angles, I've actually been measuring the angle of the camera in between each of the shots, so that I know that each shot is angled by the same amount. And again, when it comes to stitch them all together, it just makes things a lot easier. Just to show you what I mean, this is the back of my screen at the moment. Can't see a thing at the moment, so it's really hard to actually work out how to align all the different images. But these are the indicators that I was talking about. So I've got a green line across there that says that everything's level. I've got a vertical indicator as well. So on the vertical indicator is kind of showing that it's at or exceeding the amount that it's going to be able to show. So if I was to take the shot, move the pano across to take another image, I can certainly align it because that green line is easy enough to work out. But because it's gone past the maximum on the vertical, I actually find it very difficult to be able to align them. And sometimes you get images which are a bit higher, I've got more sky than the other ones. Sometimes I've got less sky than the other ones, and it just makes it very difficult to align and process later on. So I have this clinometer app, probably not saying it correctly, but this is what I'm using to actually show me the angle of the camera. It's not very scientific, but I think for a pano, it's within a couple of degrees, it's actually not bad. So my thinking is that I keep all the shots at about 39 degrees, and if they're straight and level, then the rest of it should just take care of itself. And that should allow me to align all the images in the pano and stitch them together nicely. Let's see how it goes. Here's the image. Okay, well that's it for tonight I think. It's getting a bit cool. Still pretty early though, it's only just gone about 10:30, but the Milky Way is rising pretty high, so it's just making it a bit difficult to capture anything. How'd you go tonight, Greg?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I just went and checked out my cave time lapse and was pleasantly surprised.
Nice.
I sort of had some low expectations for that, but it worked out better than I thought.
Yep, right.
And we had a bit of fun trying to get some selfies and stuff in the cave earlier on, so they seem to be coming out all right. And I went up to the top of the hill here and did a big full 35mm tracked pano. So
nice.
That was looking pretty good on the back of the camera. I didn't have anything particularly exciting in terms of foreground, but I captured the lake and a bit of bush and stuff, so nice. It should be fine. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. The 35mm pano, there's something I've got to get up to. There's I don't know, it's just there's a lot more detail in there, I think, compared to the 20. The 20's good. The 20's fantastic if you want something with a smaller number of shots. The 35, I'd have to do 3 rows of 11, so it's going to be a big pano.
Wow. Okay.
And that's plus the row for the foreground.
Yeah, fair enough. And I did 1 row of about 7.
Yeah, well, good. That's the good thing about the 20.
Yeah, it is. Cool. Yep. All right, so good night. First night.
Yep.
I think that went down pretty well.
Yep. And fingers crossed we get some more clear skies.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be able to get out of bed for the setting Milky Way a bit earlier this morning. Tomorrow morning.
Setting. Setting. Yep, that's right. We'll both. Neither of us are fully committing to that, but we'll see how we go.
All right. Cool.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Catch you later.
Cheers. The composition I had planned the previous afternoon did not work out as well as I expected, so I headed up the hill to wander around in the dark looking for some composition. As soon as I saw the rock pile on the top of the hill, I knew that was going to be my focus. As the Milky Way was starting to fade into the morning light, we finished up and headed back to the campsite, only to see the morning light bring some colour to the sky. We survived the trip back down the hill, just having a bit of a coffee at the moment before we start planning what we're going to do with the rest of the day. Just wanted to do a quick video there. This place is so quiet and so stunning. We got some sunrise happening. No one else is awake yet. A couple of birds, but that's it. And it's absolutely dead silent. Beautiful. Okay, back to the coffee. While I was enjoying my coffee, I started to contemplate going down to the Salt Lake to see how the 20mm lens would go for landscape. This is what I captured. So after watching me say, at the moment, 20 times, I hope you were counting along at home, I'm sure you're wondering how the lens actually performed. Well, the lens is part of Canon's new hybrid set of lenses, so it's good for video as well as photography. It comes in the 24, 35, 50mm and now the 20mm f1.4. And like I said, it's good for video, generally because they're all the lenses are about the same weight and size. So if you had it balanced on a gimbal, you can switch the lenses without having to rebalance anything or change any of the setup. It's also an L series lens, so you expect it to be decent quality, but that also comes with a decent price tag as well. So is it worth it? Well, first the bad. Once you get past the price tag, there's really not much wrong with the lens. There was a couple of things. You can hear it shake. Feels like there's actually something floating around inside. Probably is. It's probably the way the lens is designed, and really didn't see that as too much of an issue. Also, there is no stabilization that comes with the lens. I do have some other lenses that have, say, 3 stops of stabilization, but this doesn't have anything. For me, probably not going to be an issue. I bought this lens for astrophotography, landscape, and maybe some architecture, so it's going to be on a tripod for most of the time that I use it, so not a big issue for me. So that was pretty much it. Oh wait, no, there was one other thing. There is the iris control ring. Essentially this part on the lens, you can actually change the aperture. Again, good for video. It means that you can actually change the aperture manually, which is really good. But downside of that, it only works on some of the newer cameras. I've got the Canon R6, it's about 6 years old now, and it doesn't work. It comes up with a message saying, sorry, this feature is not available, and you probably need something like the new Canon R5 Mark II to make use of any of that. Now for the positives, the autofocus. It was quiet, it was smooth, and it was relatively fast. I wouldn't say it was quiet, you just couldn't hear it at all. And that was pretty impressive. And that's down to the Voss coil motors, which are simply a type of electric motor which utilizes magnets surrounding a coil. It's probably a bit more technical than that, but that's my best explanation. Now, I will probably be using this more for manual focus, but the autofocus is a nice thing to have. I did use the autofocus when I went down to the Salt Lake for sunrise. I was pretty impressed about how smooth and how quick and silent it was, to the point where I actually had to double check to make sure that it had actually focused, because I couldn't hear anything and it was super quick. It will also focus at 20 centimeters, so it allows you to get up really close and personal to your subject. Also allows you to take some different types of shots, so something with a little bit of a different perspective. You would have seen from the video that I was taking some images inside the cave. The inside of the cave was actually relatively small, so the photos were taken pretty close. I was worried about the focus breathing, but when I edited the images, there was literally none. So I had actually focused inside the cave, and then I'd focused on the Milky Way, and there was no issues editing the images at all, which was quite impressive. I've got the 16mm f2.8 and I've used that in the past. The focus breathing on that is pretty bad, but this is nowhere near that. It is relatively light, 519 grams, so if you like to take your camera on a hike, it does actually make a difference. I did appreciate that when I was climbing hills at 3 o'clock in the morning, so that's a good thing as well. One thing that I didn't realize came with the lens was a rear filter holder. Again, I think that's probably more for video, but it's something I wouldn't mind trying. It's a nice feature that to be aware that's actually there if you're interested. So one of the big callouts and the main reason why I got this lens was the aperture. So 20mm is good for astrophotography, but it was the f1.4 that I was really interested in trying out. And for astrophotography, it performed pretty well. I was able to get the ISO down to about 800. That was for about 20 seconds. I think I would actually try this at 15 seconds and maybe bump the ISO up to something like 1200. But the images that came out were quite nice. And we'll go through that in a little minute. But yeah, that's the big call out. There was very little stretching of the stars in the corners. There was a couple of incidences where I thought it could have performed a little bit better, but not by much. And you have to zoom in to say 150% on the image to actually see any of those inconsistencies. Now, I actually just used the lens at f1.4, probably because I was a little bit excited about using the lens at f1.4. I wish I had actually tried different apertures just to see what it looked like, especially stepping up to 1.8 or 2.8 or something like that to see how well the lens performed, even though it would have required a bump up in the ISO. So let's check out some images. This one is a single shot. This one was used for a stack of the cave. So this is one of the very early ones that I did. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to see the edges because they're covered by the cave. But zooming in, you can see that there is a lot of detail. So zoom into the core, there's a fair bit of detail there. There is a little bit of stretching on the stars, but I think that was probably my fault. Looking at the close to the edges, there's really nothing. This is at 250%, so taking that back to about 100%. There is very little stretching in the corners. Well, not quite the corners, but the edges, as much as we can do. So this next one was taken on the tracker. This was set at ISO 800 for 75 seconds. So I would expect there to be a lot more detail in this one. So zooming in, you can see how the foreground is all out of focus because it was on the tracker. Nice little bit of cloud coming through. But zooming into the core, everything seems to be pretty much in focus.
So a fair bit of detail being captured there, which is nice. So zooming out, and then just looking at some of the corners. There's a little bit of angel wings happening there. Not too bad. Again, this is at 160%. So in the middle, on the edge, that's actually still not too bad. You are getting some angel wings happening there. And right on the other edge, again, 160%, we can start to see some of the stars blowing out a little bit. No chromatic aberration from what I can see, which is nice. Zooming into a bit more detail in the core, so that's again 200%, and that's all pretty much in focus. So overall, that's not too bad. I'm pretty happy with that. So this is one of the images that I took the next morning. So this is actually facing away from the salt lake, and I can definitely see there's a big difference in the color. So about zooming into this one, so we're zooming into that, and that's just over 100%. That's pretty nice. This one was taken at 15 seconds, ISO 1600 at f1.4. One thing that I wish I had done was tried a few different shots at different apertures just to see how we go. You can get a bit of stretching on the stars right on the corner. Again, that's not too bad. That's over 100%. So yeah, one of the things I wish I'd done is taken a few shots at different apertures. I think I was just too excited to get out there and try this lens to actually remember to do it. Also, it's hard to remember what your plans were when you're out and about at 3 o'clock in the morning after very little sleep. So I might actually have to do a short video on that. But overall, I was pretty happy with how these stars came out. So yeah, quite happy with that.
All in all, I'm really happy with the lens. I would say that if I didn't have one now, then I'd probably be thinking about going out to buy one. And I think that pretty much sums up how good I think the lens is. Okay, that's it for the review. Don't forget to like the video and also subscribe so you're notified of the next one. The next stop is Kalgoorlie, and then it was on to my favorite, which was Lake Ballard. Some super dark skies, so make sure you subscribe to check that out. After that, we went on to Gwalia to check out the ghost town. Also, keep watching after this. I've added some of Greg's images to the end of the video, so have a look at Greg's images and don't forget to give him a follow as well. All the details are in the description below. Okay, thanks for watching, and I will see you out there next time. And I'm also... So Lake Brown? Okay. Here, what people like to climb. That was a pretty stupid thing to say. What I try and, with the panel shot, the autofocus. One thing that I didn't realize came with the camera. I was able to get the ice. I would say that if it didn't have,